All right, so I'm going to show you how to do a brief really quickly, and then we'll get into user stories. So this is kind of like going to be a, I don't know, built by Bolt like example. This will be the first thing that we build together. So first, let's go over here and go over here, and this is from a company, an idea that I wanted to build a long time ago, but I um, couldn't quite figure out how to do it from an engineering standpoint because you didn't have money for engineers. And I was gonna piece it together using some type of like no code, but you'll see what I'm gonna do with it because I think I have an idea. So essentially, like I go into a Google Doc and I create a couple of things. And so first I do a description. This just helps me like keep it in focus of what I'm trying to build. And so when I don't use the description for Bolt, I use the initial prompts. And so it might be something like it's called reference one, and essentially, you learn that over time, something like see if I can figure out how many. It's not over there. Okay, it's a really large number of bad hires happen because there aren't reference checks, and so I wanted to create a reference checking application that's simple for everyone. It's simple for the candidate. It's simple for the people that they have named as a reference, and it's simple ish for the people who are requesting the reference. And so, in order to essentially make it more efficient of a process, we want to use different functions of AI to um, develop it. And so back in the day, when I came up with this idea like 4 or 5 years ago, it was going to be, you would essentially call or record a voice note about a person, and then after that voice note was saved and sent in and uploaded to a portal, it would be automatically transcribed, and then it would be sent, or kind of made into kind of like a blog post or a dossier on a candidate, and it would be sent automatically to the person who requested the reference. However, technology has proceeded a lot since that time, and so I think that there's a different way that we could do it. And so this is how I think it should go. Let's see, reference one is a platform where employers, I also wanted to eventually be a place where candidates can essentially add a link to their reference one profile where they have gone through and tagged and invited people to give them references on their behalf. Think of it like think of it a little bit like LinkedIn recommendations, except a lot more intimate. And so candidates can go ahead and preempt getting references for jobs that they want. So if they want a job that really badly, they can say, "Hey, here are the references, and you can click on this link and hear people talk about me." But at the start, because we're using Bolt, we're going to simplify that quite a bit. So we'll say reference one is a platform where employers can efficiently do reference checks on potential candidates. And so, another thing about references is a lot of employers will either not do them well, or they'll like close off, they'll make their candidate funnel really tight because they realize that in order to do a good reference check, you usually need to talk to someone for 5 to 15 minutes. You have to coordinate the calls, you have to hope that the person's going to give you an honest opinion or assessment of the candidate that they're evaluating. There's lots of different like barriers to that, and so either employees will or employers will not take the reference seriously because a candidate's not going to give a bad reference to for an employer to go after, or the second part is that it's going to be a waste of time. And so with reference one, it essentially takes all the onus off of the employer and puts it all on the candidate. And so that's why we'll go into this a little bit deeper. So we'll say reference one's platform where employers can efficiently do reference checks on potential candidates. by shifting the responsibility and responses over to the references themselves. Okay, so I'm gonna pause this for a second while I think about some things. Okay, so in the background, I ran some calculations. I just used I think I used O3 High. Their naming suck at this point, but essentially just ran through to figure out the business case for actual reference checks to be automated. So you can see right here, I just did a little calculations and or let ChatGPT do some calculations. And there, if you don't know this, tools like that are really likely to hallucinate. That's why they have these O1 and O3 models, because they essentially try to reason out or logic shift, if you will, so that they're doing multiple variations of the same question to make sure that they're not hallucinating the answer. So hopefully this one isn't hallucinating that badly. But essentially I wanted to figure out what the cost of bad reference checks are, how that could be improved, how much time are they spending on ineffective ones. And so we're really trying to map out who you could be selling to, what the interface should look like. Um, and you're finding out on average you could estimate extra $5 to $10 saved for one. But if you include labor, it could be up to $50 per um, per candidate. Because if you take a 30 to 60 minutes that it takes to not only do all the reference checks, let's say there's 3 to 5 reference checks per candidate, each one takes about 10 minutes, that's 30 minutes. And then you take 15 minutes to review the candidate, 15 minutes to do analysis, and then converse with the rest of the hiring committee for this role. That's how you get that 60-minute mark. Add that all up, and then you add in the 30% of a salary if the hire is bad. So you might say that it's $15,000 per bad hire, which you want to reduce the probability of that happening as much as possible, which reference check help with. Um, and so you add it all up and you look at it and you're like, okay, it'll save 2 to 5,000 if you calculate the probability of that. But if you add that into 100 hires per year for a larger enterprise, all of a sudden you're talking about 200,000 to 500,000 saved just by doing reference checks. So that's kind of the business opportunity. So what we're trying to do essentially by making this calculation or running this is you're trying to create the best prompt for it, so that you know exactly what your pricing is going to be, or not exactly, but you're kind of getting a better idea what your pricing could be. And you're seeing here that it's really going to be helpful for someone who can hire 100 people in a year, which allow you to kind of go into something like a LinkedIn and figure out employee headcount growth over the last quarter, which a lot of people aren't hiring right now. But if you were to look into that, you might see that there are 50 companies, if you go with me there, that are hiring at that clip. So now you have an idea of who you're going to be targeting, what their role might be, and then also what they might pay, because you can also do some type of competitive intelligence research on what other tools they're using for HR, whether they're using Gusto or something like that. And that all brings you to this spot where you're about to write your initial prompts. So if you're going to build an application, um, you would start with the business case and the description, and then kind of move through what you want the experience to be, which I'll talk about in a second. So it's kind of a good starting point for figuring out how to write your description, start to create the brief, and then also create a business use case that is viable to make sure that you're on the right path, because you're going to do a lot of building without customer input. Um, but in the meantime, you really want to get as close to commercially viable as humanly possible before you start building or coding anything.